Welcome back to see you on the show, Deedee Myers. I'm delighted to get on your calendar. It's tough. You are one busy lady traveling all over the place, educating the credit union movement on succession and leadership development and board strategy. So thank you for coming back, Deedee.
Doug, always good to see you and be with you. And, thank you for what you say. It's a passion of ours to get out there and do this work, and we love every day of it. So thank you.
So let's talk today about leadership, about succession planning to make sure your organization is ready. So what are you seeing in succession planning at this time in 2025? Like what sort of things are changing? What are the new key concerns? And how are you coaching credit unions to be able to be successful?
Oh, great question. So, we have NCUA out with their new policy and what's supposed to be in place January 1st, 2026. So there are some organizations that are getting ready for that. There's smaller ones and the larger ones. And the smaller ones are really concerned, Doug, because it's going to take a lot of time. Yep, there's also what NCUA is saying that 32% of the mergers and acquisitions are motivated from smaller credit unions who do not have successors. So that's one piece. The larger ones, we're seeing getting calls from a lot of organizations that say, my examiner's in here. I have to put together a succession plan. Do you have a template? So yeah, really coming out with templates and ways of doing that, responding. But also we're seeing that the need, there's still a lot of CEOs who are tapping out. We're seeing more CEOs now, Doug, leaving early, which is putting the board on alert. So we've got NCUA, but we also have organizations doing the right thing and wanting to be strategic, at least for the CEO succession. On the board side, we're seeing a big pressure from them that they want to advance and elevate their role in the organization and how they govern. They want to make sure they've got the right people on the board so they can pace with their high-performing CEO. And, conversations that used to take a year and a half, 2 years, Doug, I'm seeing expedited within a few months now. They're paying attention and wanting to stand up and do the work. It's really interesting out there right now. A lot of opportunity for
Hmm.
credit unions to advance their offer here.
It's interesting the potential acceleration in retirements. I mean, if you look at the financial markets, they've been pretty robust after 2022, and that would have driven 457 balances, 401k balances up a lot. So I can
Yeah.
imagine that may have empowered some executives to be able to move their data up a bit, right? And
Yeah. I'm seeing some actually a step out too, even though their split dollar underperformed. There's this place in the organization life cycle where a CEO goes, a really, I would say, a high-performing CEO goes, we need to get into a new vision, a new way of looking at the organization. And I might not be the one to do that. Might need to step aside. Yes, maybe my 401k or 457 or split dollar is not where I want it to be, but they're actually stepping aside and going, let's get somebody else in here board. I'll support and onboard them. And so they can help set the new vision, get the organization going on that strategic trajectory and start executing faster than I could. So some very humble people out there that
mm.
I appreciate their role modeling.
Yeah, true servant leadership I find so inspiring in this credit union movement. So let's talk about some organizations that do it right and wrong. And I know you probably won't, but you can name names and tell stories, Deedee. We love that to hear stories of. All right, I know you wouldn't, but you can tell the right ones that did it really good. But tell us some stories about some boards and credit unions doing succession planning right, and what's the process? Where does it come from? How do you know if you're not on track to do it right?
Oh, a lot there. And, I
Yeah,
could
yeah,
talk all
sorry.
day, so cut me off here. But, I speak from top of mind. So what I'm seeing is boards and executives actually looking at the distinction between replacement and strategic succession planning. So
Mm.
replacement is a job opens up, let's put somebody in there, right? We'll talk about the CEO. So the board is actually moving away from just saying, let's get somebody like our last CEO. they're moving towards what do we need in the future? What's going on in the external markets? What's going on with AI and cybersecurity? What's going on all over the world that we need to think differently now. So I'm very excited about that. Instead of saying we have this position description from 2012, let's just do it again. So that piece is wonderful. So that's strategic succession planning. We're still encouraging boards to, you can do this anytime. You don't have to wait for a year out. You can do it 5 years out. Look at, well, what do we need to look at 5 years out, 3 years out? 2 years is getting pretty close. And that's what we need to look internally at the minimum amount. I love 3 to 5 years, Doug. And who's internally that we need to start developing and how do we develop them? And that's a whole track too. How do we develop the internal candidates so they can compete with the external candidates? And then a year out, deciding are we going to go internally or externally? So I'll name names. So Nusenda, love Nusenda. They're in Albuquerque, one of my favorite organizations to work with. They've always been very strategic on their leadership and leadership development. So they had a change here earlier this year, but last fall, they did a great piece of work, Doug, on looking at internal candidates, and they were dedicated to promoting and advancing internal candidate, and they worked super hard. The executives did, the board did, and Michelle Deerholt got the Elevate, and wonderful. You can look her up on LinkedIn, doing a great job. But that board was tremendous. So I think they did it right, and I love how they keep doing that kind of work.
So did they start the 5 years, 2 years back, and then activate the plan when the CEO exited? Was that the process behind it?
Yeah, they started about 5 years ago and advanced another person into the CEO role, and then he said he needed to go, but he was also advancing his three executives, but one that is doing it 5, 7, 8 years in the future. Again, I'm not saying any CEOs are declaring a date, but they're very dedicated.
Yeah.
So I go, Chris at Potlatch, P1 FCU, right, is doing a great job in Idaho, many, many, many years in the future, looking at his executive team and who can he keep elevating and get CEO ready. And the board's all behind that and supporting it. So the board there did their work. I think it's a couple years now. The internals are still doing a great job and they're taking on more responsibilities, which is helping the organization where they are right now. But they're in a really good spot there.
How do
Really
you
good.
balance that behavior shift? When the time gets short for the CEO and the senior VPs are jockeying for that position, it can cause some new behaviors to show up. How do you kind of balance that if someone says, all right, it's 10 years until I'm going to retire, and you build the strategic plan, and then it starts to get closer. I did a research paper a few years back, and one of the things that I had said in it was to to be prepared as the CEO when you make your announcement that the behavior, the ability of your executive team to function as a team might change. It might be disrupted by your announcement. And I know you well enough to know you're way ahead of that in the guidance that you give boards. What's the methodology for how to deal with that? That especially if you're planning jointly with your board, making the plan 10 years in advance, everyone can see that happening. How do you deal with that?
Well, it is difficult. That's difficult, but we've had some clients along the way where they do wonderful team alignment work. So let's say you have an executive team of 5 C-suite people, and maybe 2 or 3 want to be CEO in the future, but they do that work, and there's transparency, Doug. It's not a closed session. It's an open process. So we've worked with these teams where 3 of them will say, "Yep, I'm in," and we work with all 5 of them, and they help each other. They coach each other. So if you got somebody who's really strong in the finance area but doesn't have the operations or the people, that person was coaching the finance person. The finance person is teaching, the retail person about finance and balance sheet management, alcohol, and all that. That's not typical, but it is a great practice. So I believe it comes from the board culture and the CEO, the sitting CEO, to actually encourage that and bring them together. So there's that. But then there's also, we always look at, if you are advanced, how will you integrate and align with those who are your former peers? And so there's that piece, and sometimes it works really well, and sometimes it doesn't. It's can you make that decision that that person may not follow you to the new vision of the organization? So there's a lot of regard and dignity that's needed there. But at the bottom line here is we have to encourage the boards and the new CEO to do what's right for the membership versus not hurting somebody's feelings, if that makes sense.
Hmm.
'Cause I've heard that before. Oh, cannot move that person out of this role or move him over and down, might hurt his feelings or her feelings. Then we go long term. What is that going to look like if you don't do that? Think out 5 years. What's the risk to the organization? So looking at it from a logistical or logical perspective, Doug, and then helping with that process. And at the end of the day, often that executive wasn't happy anyway.
Yeah.
Well, they were not happy with that situation. So they will move or we can support with the outplacement process and get them ready to go somewhere else. So that's where we do the outplacement.
How do you know, if you think you think you've handled this as an organization, you think you have you've got an EVP and you think that is your successor, and so you think you've addressed this. What would be some things that might happen that would cause you to say, well, maybe I need to be a little more formal about evaluating the candidate's capabilities or the direction of the board and how well that fits together? What are the things you might see that would cause you to need to relook at that?
Uh, Oh, that's a good question. Let me just say, I think a formal system and structure is needed, even if you are going to go internally. I think it goes back to the board having accountability for the fiduciary and leadership responsibility that
Mhm.
they bring. So
Mm.
it's that leadership mindset on the board. So we're hoping more boards move in that direction. We still have some that just want to do the easy thing and put an internal person in there, whether they're ready or not, Doug. So it's an awakening. I think what we'll do is actually, when we have the opportunity, is help them assess the internal candidates and
Yeah.
project that candidate into the future as a leader and look at the pros and cons of that potential leader as CEO and putting in front of the board, if you go with this particular internal candidate, here's what your future might look like. And what do you want to do? We can't make the decision for them, but we can put it in front of them and go, here's your pluses and minuses, risks and rewards. Where do you want to go? Is it still a deliberate but difficult conversation for them?
Yeah, so it's assessments that I know from our previous interviews
Yeah.
that you have a wide variety of assessments that you can put the candidate through to try to evaluate their leadership tendencies and their leadership capabilities.
Oh, yes, and I was sharing with you earlier, so we have all this data that we're looking at, and it's clearly stating that external candidates score much higher, for example, in leadership and employee development and coaching than the internal candidates, also in futuristic thinking. So we now can say, here's your internal candidate, here's how they're scoring, here's what the external market scores. What do you think about this? They're 5, 10 basis points higher externally. What would that bring to your organization if you had that talent inside? And if your CEO is not going to retire for 5 years, why don't we put a development plan in place
Yeah,
here?
yeah. Let's
Yeah,
close the gap. Let's go close the gap
absolutely.
between the two and create an internal win. I mean, is that something you've seen happen where they develop
Absolutely.
the skills?
Oh, yes. There's several of those that have done that. Tulsa, some others, Potlatch, P1 FCU, several have done that. Altura's doing a lot of that work. But when I look at the competencies for internal candidates, and you look at the top 5 or 6, employee development and coaching is not even in that set. It's not there,
Hmm.
not there. Diplomacy scores high. Let's not get into that courageous, sticky conversation. Let's be very diplomatic and can, consensus building and collaborative, but not the constructive conflict management or employee development coaching. And I think that's something we want to really amp up in our conversations, Doug, and bring that to the attention of the industry for the sake of the industry.
Well, it seems like it creates the win-win. If you can reward the qualified, competent internal candidate with that opportunity, it's potentially much less disruptive, and it's a path that other people in the organization can see having been achieved. The question is does the person have the ability to take what you can teach them and do it, right?
Yeah, some do. So we do look at that. So we look at what are the professional aspirations of the person? What do they think they want and why? Oh, some of them will say, I want to, I'm ready to be the next CEO. Why? Well, it's next on my list in my career path. Well, what have you done to develop yourself there? Well, not, but I've been here for 20 years.
Right.
Right.
I'm owed.
So
It's my turn.
and that has an employee development, professional development has not been part of that culture. Then you look at what are the professional aspirations of that candidate? How do they overlap with where the organization is strategically going? They may or may not, and then how do they professional aspirations overlap with how my boss sees me, how others sees me, how the board sees me? So it's quite a small overlap between those three circles there. However, I
Mhm.
do want to say this is really, really cool to hear, and I keep thinking about this kind of work is that we do have this program called the See Yourself, called the CY, See Yourself CEO Readiness Program. And it is a multi-month program geared towards a lot towards the internal candidate, Doug. And guess what? They stay in it. Their strategic thinking elevates, their critical thinking elevates, a sense of their self has more clarity. They're able to step into the robust conversations. They can distinguish what is a powerful request and what is an offer, all sorts of stuff. And guess what? They score higher in their assessments and I can get behind them. I can actually write a report saying, we believe this candidate is ready and you don't need to do an external search. I think that's a win-win.
Yeah, it sounds like it. So when you do that, is that three executives? Is that the whole team? Like who goes through that?
Yeah, good question. So there's conversations. The CEO can tee it up or the chair can tee it up, can basically say, I'm 3 years out, I'm 2 years out. Who amongst you executives believes that you want to be considered as a potential candidate, wants to believe to be considered, not wants to be, right? We want to go with consideration first.
Yeah.
So who wants to be a potential candidate? Then they come into the program. It's usually not all five, it's usually two or three.
Mhm.
And then there's a bit in there where the CEO may say, I don't think that third one is anywhere near ready, but let's put her through it, put him through it, because that skip generation might be ready in 5 to 7 years. So get it going. And I think that's a blessing for the organization. That's a need. I love that futuristic thinking.
Now, it seems like in preparation for this, I read that you had some concerns for the industry that maybe the bench wasn't great. Maybe the bench wasn't as strong as it needs to be. What's behind that? Is that true in the first place? And if so, what's behind it?
It is. And so what we're seeing there is that mid-level is not being developed. Yeah, we have a whole segment on this. Mid-level is not being developed, nor takes the time to be developed because they're very task oriented. Let's get the job done. What's happening though, and oftentimes they're not able to get the job done or able to prioritize what needs to be done. So what's happening, Doug, is the executives are reaching down to do the work of the mid-levels versus stepping back and saying, I'm going to sit with you. We're going to look at the future, look at what needs to be done, prioritize, and put a good execution plan together. However, I also want to say the mid levels are hungry. They want to grow, they want to develop. Yet I'm also seeing a lot of the executives don't know how to do that development. Sometimes they're calling in outside services like ours and others to help them learn how to do that, which I appreciate. So there's that. They're task oriented And again, they're replacement oriented. Let's replace this job versus looking at where's our organization going with our vision and strategy and upticking that position description. And it's not a strategic priority to develop people because they're rewarded on getting projects done.
Yeah.
Projects
It,
done.
I remember that, and I apologize for not being sure if it was you or Peter, because you both do such a great
Okay.
job in this content. You had said, and we were talking about getting your board to to think strategically. And what you said was to don't put tactical tasks, operations tasks in front of your board if you want them to think strategically. Put only strategic tasks in front of your board if you want them to think strategically. And this seems like a similar situation where if you want strategic executives, make sure you're asking strategic questions.
Absolutely. And so working with the board a couple weeks ago, and they super want a new CEO that's visionary and strategic. And they kept asking how questions. So on a break, I said, let's reframe. When you ask a how question, you're asking for the process and the procedure. Let's change that to what do you see for the future? What are different avenues or scenarios we need to think about strategies? When you ask a how question, you're really asking about process. And the candidate's wondering, is this a, board that gets operationally involved because they're asking a lot of how?
Yeah.
That was revealing to the board. They go, we never thought of it like that. I go, so you want to go what and why? Leave the how out of the room right now. It's what and why when you're talking a strategic
So
conversation.
then that's another way for you to talk to when you're trying to guide your executive team to think like that, to
Yeah.
ask the what and the why
The what,
questions,
why.
to be training them to think more strategically.
So what
Yeah.
happened? Yeah, the board is asking the how to the executive team in the board meeting. The
Hmm.
executive team is giving them the how. Then later they go, why is our board so involved in the operation? I say, why don't you ask them, do they want to have a strategic conversation or a task-oriented conversation?
Hmm.
Therefore, we get that loop, that double loop there, Doug. The executives are not in a strategic conversation and they're allowing the board to be in an operational conversation. You got to stop it. Somebody's got to say, "Hey, let's pause here."
Well, let's take this conversation a little tactical. I know you have that a process, right? There's a 5 point process for developing a strategic plan or a strategic culture. Can you tell us, go through that process for getting you to where you're more strategic?
Yeah, well, I'll give some of it. So we start with what's called a strategic framework. And this is some of the work we do in our See Yourself and also when we're helping an organization start to look strategically. So we call out like what are the premises and assumptions you're coming into the room with? And they go, "What do you mean? Premise and assumptions." Well, what are your assumptions about your organization, about your culture, about your financials, about your product line, about your leadership? What are your assumptions or premises about the external culture? So bring all that out from all the actors in the room, Doug. And that's a big conversation because if we don't bring that out first in the discovery, then whatever plans or visions we're putting together may not be on a foundation. And then we want to go, how are we going to organize together? What's our organizing principle? And that's really encapsulating the why. Why are we doing what we're doing? And I'm just giving you the five that are up front before we actually get into a plan of execution. Then we want to go, what are the strategic pillars? What are the foundational filters that we're going to use to make decisions? What are the foundational filters that we're going to use to make decisions? So one of ours is rich and relevant content. So whatever we do, Doug, we go through the filter at DDJ, is it rich and relevant content? If not, why are we even in this conversation? That's one of ours, for example. And then the other one is what are the core competencies? And that's like the actions we consistently take. Everybody wants to go, what do we do really well? Well, you're going to say, oh, we take care of our members, we take care of our employees, and so does everybody else say that.
Yeah.
Go to go to the competencies that direct the actions that you consistently take. And then one more value proposition ranking. We ask the board and the executive team and the key managers and the process, how do you uh, how do you prioritize the value proposition? And we ask them to force rank these three things. One is customer intimacy, the other is innovation, and the other is operational efficiency. And they can only pick one. Guess what the board picks?
Operational efficiency.
Yeah, typically customer intimacy.
Hmm.
They want the member to be taken care of. They don't give a hoot about the operational efficiency, so or sometimes innovation. But then you get the management team going operational efficiency. So we're in a polarization with each other. So the conversation is which one do we want to organize around? So those are some of the five or six that we start with. There's more down the pike, but that's a big conversation that we think should happen in the spring. Do that conversation for a day, day and a half with all the right people in the room, then walk away and go, what are the things we need to be looking at from a strategic perspective? And then come back 2 or 3 months later and have that other conversation.
And now one of those questions was a how. I noticed they were all whats, not a single how in there.
Yeah, thanks for noticing that. Yeah. We haven't decided what we want to do yet. We touched on why, but really, yeah, you're right. You're right.
Now, AI is changing everything, right? Like immediately, just super fast. How is that changing these conversations? How's that changing the skill set that
Yeah.
you need to have to be successful in today's organizations?
Yeah, where we're seeing AI in the top three now, 3 to 5 competencies from a strategic perspective that boards now want in their composition. So that's
Hmm.
just data we're pulling out right now. We're going to be presenting it in the next 2 to 4 weeks, but AI is out there. And so what we're also seeing on our boards is that some of our board members are actually getting certified in AI, Doug.
Really? Wow.
You look at Ed from Penn Fed, you chair of the board, he's just all over it and really just saying, yeah, we need to be certified. Doesn't mean we're doing it, but I need to be able to ask the right questions
Hmm.
and understand what our team is saying to us. So I think that's groundbreaking and it should be common sense, right?
It is a must-win initiative for credit unions. And yeah, the more leaders that are plugged into AI and its capabilities and how much of a difference it can make for your credit union, I think it must happen. So leadership like that with a board chair becoming certified in AI, wow, I didn't even know that was an option.
I think we should put in every board member's development plan.
Yeah, who's certified? Like, do you know what that course is? Where was that from?
Oh, there's all sorts of them, all over the place. I think Cornell does one, some fintechs do them, but I can send you a list or put in touch with Ed and he can give it to you.
Yeah,
But
we'll put it in the we'll put it in the notes for today's
okay.
podcast. Well, so for let's just back up as we wrap this up. So if you were just beginning down this journey of having a robust succession plan, and you've listened to this episode and want to kind of have a step-by-step series, what do you do next?
Be in a commitment to be in a strategic succession conversation, not even this is a succession plan. Be in a strategic conversation about succession. What is it and why should we do it? And get alignment on that at the board level and at the CEO level. That's number one.
Don't you have some CEOs that don't want to own up to it yet? Like, don't want to admit, like, I'm gonna, the board sometimes, the CEOs I work with, the board usually wants more of you. They're not ready to let you go at 62. They really want you to stick around 63 or 65. And if you've been there a long time, you've achieved a financial success, you might be ready to go. And that frank conversation could be a difficult conversation. Does that happen for you, Deedee? And like, how do you guide through that?
Well, I think age is people use age for succession. I think it's a conversation we should have day one we're in the job, whether you're 45 or 50 or whatever it is. I don't wake up any day, Doug, without saying, if something happens to me today, who's taken over? That's always on my mind. Always on my mind. Always looking at people I hire, people I develop in all meetings. Can she do that? Can he step in? it should be a number one priority. We should be evaluating our CEOs on developing the executives to be CEO ready. And we don't do that. So I think that's a mistake. I think we need to erase that age thing. Yes, age is a trigger, money, or 401k, or retirement plan, all of that. But there's some people, point person here you're talking to, like, I'm not going to retire at a certain age. It's going to be driven by something else, which I can happy to share with you, but because my boss asked me about it the other day. But it's just no, it's I think we need to shift our mindset on make it a priority every day, not just an age driven factor.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just used to it coming up from the age-driven factors. But yeah,
Yeah,
the biggest takeaway is it just needs to be a part of what you're doing as the senior executive all the time, developing your board, developing
yeah.
your bench, and making it as strong as possible. So, Deedee, thank you for the work you do in helping the credit union movement think strategically and be successful. It's mission critical that we continue to spread this word and that your work continues to grow. So thanks so much for the work that you do and for joining me once again on See You on the Show.
My pleasure, Doug, and I appreciate you being a voice for the industry and bringing forward thought leaders. It's amazing. You're so good at this, so keep doing it.
I will. Thanks, Deedee.